Wendy. And see, she just reached over and recorded because I had forgotten. So we're going to get tonight's presentation very soon here, but I want you to see what's going on, what's coming up. So on the 18th of March, Moths of the Gila National Forest with Ron Perry. Now, Ron's been with us a long time, and he lives up in the burrows, and he is Mr. Moth. And it's just fascinating because, you know, moths nocturnal, we just don't know them as well as we know the butterflies, but they are absolutely fascinating, and by far many, many more magnitudes more of moths than there are butterflies. So he's going to talk to us about that. And we're going to ask him a little bit about that relationship between host plants, you know, native plants that are hosts to the caterpillars, because the caterpillars of the moths and butterflies are so extremely important for our fledgling birds. I mean, it's the major energy source as they're getting, you know, as they hatch and they get ready to fly. I mean, it's a major source. So anyway, we're gonna see if we can get him to talk a little bit about that as well. Something we just got online or got set up here in April on our show will be The Ecology of Herbal Medicine by Dara Seville. And she has a new book, I think, by the same name. And she's going to look at 5 or 6 native plants that we have right here in the Gila and talk about the ecology of those plants and how the ecology of the plants seems to work well with, you know, the habitat and the environment that they're in, and also the herbal characteristics and remedies that they present. So anyway, that's going to be a really, really fun, I think. We have our new, at the Silver Creek Botanical Garden, our new healing garden. So that will really tie into one of the themes that we're working on at the Silver Creek Botanical Garden. The best kept secret, by the way, in Silver City. In May, Russ Kleinman, one of our eminent botanists, is going to talk about the penstemons of the Gila. And he's going to unveil a new penstemon that was found just about a year ago by someone that a couple of folks that you'll probably recognize. In May, we'll start up our monthly field trips, field walks. We can't tell you where we're going because we always like to scout those areas out first and see, you know, what's blooming. And so, but we will keep you abreast of that. Members should all be getting an email. I mean, several emails. We'll let you know when this next program is coming up. We'll let you know when the wildflower walks are coming up. So if you are a member and you got here by some means tonight, but you are not getting those on your email, please let us know, because for some reason we have some problems with that. But you can always look in the, you know, the daily press, and we'll have announcements when they'll put us in. And Donna's talk tonight, they had a wonderful spread in the daily press a few days ago about the talk. And so check that out, talk to your friends, and you're all welcome. You're all welcome, whether you're members or not, to enjoy our field trips, to enjoy our programs. And if you would like to check out our website, and there are so many things on that website that you just need to go and explore. It's gilanps.org. So,
Native Plant Society.
Without further ado, I'm going to ask everyone to mute, except Donna.
Actually, Don, you're going to mute everybody, and then Donna's going to unmute herself.
Okay.
So mute all.
See what I say? The brains of the operation. Okay, and then Donna, you can unmute yourself.
You're muted now. Okay, maybe not.
And
Okay.
share.
There we go.
Okay. I have to figure that part out again.
Um,
Okay.
Perfect.
Does that
Looks
look
great.
good? Can you see everything?
Looks-
Okay.
It looks great. I'm
Okay.
going to mute and take it away.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending this Zoom presentation. I originally was asked to give this presentation in March of 2020, which, as you know, and it is when the pandemic really started full force in the US. And this ended up being one of the very first talks that was canceled because of the pandemic. And that was before all of us became Zoom experts. Let's hope I'm a Zoom expert. Anyway, the challenge with scheduling a talk such as this on spring wildflowers is that you can't know in advance what, if anything, is going to flower in the spring, since the bloom is so dependent on winter and early spring precipitation. So what we're going to do tonight is to look at some pretty cool flowers, which you may end up not seeing actually. So let me just fix my screen here for a second, because I'm seeing a weird view of everything. Well, I might not be able to do that. So what we're seeing here in this picture is Lomatium nevadense, biscuit root, and it's in the umbel or the Apiaceae family. It's a very low growing plant, and the next slide will show a close-up of it. This is something that comes up really early in the spring. Here's the close-up of the flowers. It flowers in lower elevations in February and March. And as I said, it's in the Apiaceae or the umbel family, along with a lot of plants that you're all very, very familiar with, like carrot, dill, osha, hemlock, poison hemlock, water hemlock. I just want to take a short digression here to say that, to talk about the pronunciation of scientific names. I do not know Latin. So I pronounce names however I see fit. And I know that there might be some Latin scholars out there who are cringing, and I apologize to you for that. But I do want to say that I have had on occasion, I've had occasion to be in a group of the very best botanists in the state on a couple of field trips, and they're all pronouncing things differently. So I just really relaxed about the whole thing, and I hope that you all do too. So, like, you know, I'm just trying to encourage people to not be frightened of scientific names. Latin's a dead language. We're mostly not offending people. Okay, so I want to show you now a few plants that are in a really huge plant family. And this is the Fabaceae, or the bean or pea family. This plant that we're looking at right now is a lupin, Lupinus brevicaulis. And this flowers in April to May. It's very low growing, and you can see that it has extremely woolly leaves. I'm hearing a little bit of noise background, so I'm not sure if someone needs to mute themselves or what. But that would be helpful if somebody could do that. So I want you to look at this leaf arrangement here. You can see how hairy or woolly this plant is. And also this leaf arrangement this is a compound leaf. And this one is called palmately compound because all the leaflets arise from a common place. The way I remember it is it's sort of like the fingers of your hand all coming from your palm. Brevicaulis, the specific epithet of this name, means short stem. And you can see this is a very low growing plant. Don, were you raising your hand? Can't hear you.
Don, you're muted.
It looked like you were raising your hand, Don, but you're muted. Okay, you're not raising your hand.
Are you muted now? Yeah.
I didn't do that. I don't know how that happened. I take back everything I said about being a Zoom expert. This is a close-up of the Lupinus brevicaulis flower, and you can see, if you're a gardener or familiar with plants at all, that it's a pretty characteristic pea flower, and this lets you know that this flower is in the bean family. Here's another lupin. This is in the same family, Fabaceae, the bean family, and it's also in the same genus. So this is another lupin, Lupinus consinus, and this one flowers in May, and again, in April rather. And you can see again how very, very hairy the leaves are on this thing. Here's another plant in the Fabaceae family. And this one is, its common name is deer vetch. This is a scientific name that I just learned today. I've always known this plant as lotus wrightii, or the common name deer vetch, but the name has changed now. And so I have put on this slide the latest and greatest name, which is really, I don't exactly know how to say this name. It's very awkward in my mouth. So I would just call it acmispon, which really does not roll off the tongue in any way. But this plant comes up when it's very, very dry. And so you'll probably see this plant even if you don't see some of the other ones that we're going to see on the slide presentation today.
So Donna,
Yeah.
Donna, it's thinking about this pronunciation thing.
Yeah.
And I have, and I think probably many of the viewers tonight have exactly the same thought or same problem, is that, you know, we learned it, maybe we took botany, we had, you know, intro biology, etc., and we learned to say it a certain way.
Yeah.
And then we go to another school, or we talk to colleagues and they pronounce it differently. And I think that what is correct is the way that you learned to pronounce it. And I think Kelly Allred says the same thing, and he's sort of the god of native plants in New Mexico. Yeah. So don't sweat that. And I think that your acmispon wrightii is just spot on.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. It sounds very foreign. Anyway, this is a plant that comes up even when it's very, very dry. I see this growing in the dirt road at my house. And, you know, it's a pretty inhospitable place, the middle of my road that I drive over. But that's where I see this coming up. And now I want to show you a close-up of it. Again, you can see this is a pea flower. This is in the bean family, Fabaceae. And this particular plant flowers in May. These dates are all a little bit approximate because, you know, it's so weather dependent and there's other variables as well. Here's another plant. We're still in the Fabaceae family. This one is woolly milk vetch, and this is Astragalus mollissimus. There's a lot of species of Astragalus in New Mexico. And I personally have a very hard time distinguishing one from the other, but I can usually tell when I'm looking at the genus Astragalus. You can look at this plant and see that it has compound leaves. You can see that leaflet arrangement on the right side of the screen. Unlike the lupins that we just looked at, these are pinnately compound, not palmately compound. This is a very common leaf arrangement. You'll see it in all kinds of trees and shrubs and plants. It's very common. You probably all know what a tree of heaven looks like. It has pinnately compound leaves, so do walnuts and soapberries and lots of other plants. I hope you're starting to see a pattern here. that this looks, this close-up shows that this is a pea flower. That makes you know that it is in the Fabaceae family. That's a really good thing to learn, some of the common characteristics of the families. And this is a fairly easy one to identify. It's a big plant family, but at least you have a starting point if you know that what you're looking at is a bean in the Fabaceae family. For instance, if you are looking ever at Robert DeWitt Ivy's book, Flowering Plants of New Mexico, this whole book is arranged according to families. So you don't want to leaf through a book with this many pages. It really helps to have a starting point and to know what family you're looking at. So that's why I talk about families. Here's another really common flower that is one of the first ones to come up in the spring. Even when it's really cold out, you'll see this Corydalis aurea or golden smoke. And I just wanted to show you here, you can't see the flowers very well in this photo, but I do have a close-up. I want to show you the leaves here and how kind of parsley looking they are, even though this isn't in the parsley family. But this is in the Papaveraceae or the poppy family. And I just wanted to show you what the leaves look like. They're pretty distinctive. And then here's the close-up of what the flower looks like. And you can see that it has a really long floral tube, which is kind of reminiscent of a penstemon, but it's not a penstemon. It has several common names. One of them is golden smoke. It flowers in March and April. Years ago, I was doing a volunteer event with some school kids, and when we looked at a plant called golden smoke, naturally their first question is, can they smoke it? So I think the answer is no. Here's another really low growing flower that comes up in the spring. Even if it's really dry, you'll probably see this, and it's very conspicuous. It has a very big flower, even though it grows very, very close to the ground. It's only an inch or two tall, but it has really large flowers. This is the stemless evening primrose, or Enothera cespitosa. Sometimes when you see these flowers, you won't just see one, you'll see a whole patch of them, a whole field of them. And from a distance, it could look like those flowers are so large, they can look like they're little pieces of paper spread out over the ground. Also in the background here on the left side of your screen, those yellow and red flowers, that is, that's the plant that we already saw, the deer vetch. So there's two different things going on here, probably more than two actually. And here's a close-up of Enothera cespitosa in the Onagraceae or evening primrose family. There's a primrose family and there's an evening primrose family, two different families. This one is evening primrose. So, these are the ones that close up in the heat of the day and open in the evening. And then you can see kind of on the bottom left corner of the screen, a little pinkish flower that's dried up. These kind of turn pinkish or orange when they are, when the flower is aging. This one flowers in April. And you can see here very, very easily that it has 4 petals. That's a characteristic of the Onagraceae or evening primrose family, 4 petals. Here's a super cool plant that you most likely will not see because it definitely needs to have some winter precipitation in order to come up. But I just wanted to include it because I have seen it sometimes, and I've seen it in pretty inhospitable, rocky, dry places. This is Anemone tuberosa, or Desert Anemone. I think where I've seen it is on Boston Hill, which, as you know, is very dry, rocky, and that's where I kind of remember seeing it. It's in the Ranunculaceae or the buttercup family. And I'm going to show you a close-up of it because it's a beauty. And I just want to digress just for a minute here because there isn't a lot of possibility of seeing this flower this spring. And that isn't just seasonal variability. It also has to do with the proverbial elephant in the room, climate change. And I just happened to read today an article saying that the US West is in a mega drought, the largest, most extreme one we've been in for 1,200 years. So, you know, we obviously can't say that any dry period is definitely connected to climate change, but we can see that there's a trend. It's becoming hotter and drier in the Southwest. So I'm afraid that these plants will become even harder to see in the future. So this article defined a mega drought as a period of about 20 years or more than 20 years when it's been extremely dry. And the period from 2000 to 2018 was the second driest in 1,200 years. That's pretty dramatic. And then the last 2 years, 2019, 2020, or 2021 even, were so dry that these last 1,200 years have been pushed into the category of the very worst mega drought we've seen in 1,200 years. So the odds of seeing some of these plants are dwindling. So if you have a chance to see them, take that chance. Don't miss out on that opportunity. Back to our regularly scheduled program of looking at spring wildflowers. This is Calochortus ambiguus. This is a monocot. The ones we've seen up to this point were eudicots. This one is a monocot. And this, again, just like that desert anemone that we looked at, is one that you're going to see in April and May, only if we've had adequate precipitation. So you might not see it this year. And you can see the three petals, the white petals, and underneath it, the pale green sepals. Those are characteristics of the lily family, and actually of all monocots, flower parts in threes. And that contrasts with flower parts in fours or fives, which is what we've been seeing up to this slide. Here's another monocot for you. This is Allium macropetalum, or Arizona onion. And on the right side of the screen, you can kind of see around next to the flower, you can see some things that look like green onions. That's because they are. If we had smell-o-vision, you'd be able to tell that this thing smells oniony. And so I want to take a moment to just encourage people to, when you're looking at plants, to not just look, but to use your other senses as well. Touch, smell. This smells oniony. If something smells oniony, you can be pretty sure it's in the onion family, the Alliaceae. And taste is another one of our senses that I guess you have to be a little bit more careful with. You don't automatically want to taste every plant out there, although we don't really have very many poisonous plants in this area. Most of us know what poison ivy looks like. Definitely want to leave that alone. And there's a few other things that are poisonous, such as Sacred Datura. It's pretty distinctive looking, although I don't have a picture of it here. And a few plants that bite back, like stinging nettles or nose burn. But those are pretty temporary irritants. So, even touching stuff is mostly okay, with, of course, the exception of poison ivy. And we have a few things that are deadly, like death camas, but I've seen death camas maybe twice in the last 20 years. So your odds of seeing that are fairly low. Here's a close-up of the Arizona onion, Allium macropetalum. Again, you can see this is a monocot. You can see the three petals. And underneath the three petals, you can see the three sepals. And they look so much alike that botanists who really love words have come up with another word to describe this. Besides petals and sepals, if they look so similar as they do in this flower, they're called tepals. So, I've thought that botanists must love words almost as much as they love plants, because there are just so many words in botany. Fortunately for me, I like both. Okay, so we're going to go back to the eudicots now. This is a flower in a really, really huge family, the composite plant family, or the Asteraceae. This is probably the biggest family in New Mexico. It's also, for me anyway, one of the most difficult to distinguish one plant from another. So if you're a rank beginner, this is not a good family to start with, but they're cool. And this one is Townsendia exscapa, the stemless Townsend Daisy. That exscapa has nothing to do with escaping. You can see there's an X in it. So what that really means is that it has almost no stem. Scape is another word for a stem. It grows very, very close to the ground. But again, like the evening primroses, it's very conspicuous because it's a big flower, even though it's sitting, this far above ground. It's a shorty for sure. This blooms in March or thereabouts. Here's something that you probably all recognize, the Mexican poppy, Eschscholzia californica, subspecies mexicana. This blooms in March and April, and you probably all, or at least I hope you've all had the experience of seeing a whole field or hillside just absolutely covered with poppies. But even in a year where that does not happen, you'll still see them growing here and there on the roadsides. This is in the poppy family, Papaveraceae. And I want to show you a close-up just to show you some color variation. They can be kind of orangish to yellowish. But poppies aren't the only plants that put on these big displays that can turn the ground a solid color other than brown. And this is an example of one that can also grow in great profusion and turn a field solid yellow. This one's more yellow than the poppy. This is Gordon's bladderpod, Physaria gordonii, and this is in the Brassicaceae or the mustard family. Here's a close-up of the flower. And you can see in this flower 4 petals, and they're kind of in the shape of a cross or an X. That is a characteristic of the mustard family or the Brassicaceae. Also, for some reason, I don't know, maybe somebody on the call on the meeting here does know, so many things in the mustard family are yellow. So many flowers are yellow. Not all of them, certainly. There's white ones and purple ones, but a lot of them are yellow. And they have unusual fruits, which are very distinctive. So again, this is a way to narrow things down to a family, the Brassicaceae or mustard family. These are the fruits of Physaria gordonii, Gordon's bladderpod. And you can see how those round fruits are standing erect at the top of the stem. They're very conspicuous. And that's another character of the mustard family. Although the fruits have different shapes, you'll see that they stand up at the top of the stem. Here's another plant in the same family, Draba mogollonica. Its common name is Mogollon whitlow grass, which isn't very meaningful to me. But again, this is in the mustard family. It comes up very, very early. It can be quite cold and this will come up. It grows at higher elevations and it can come up as early as March. And here's a close-up of it where you can see that it has 4 petals, although these are an exception. They're not really in that cross or X shape. You know, in biology, it's always messy and there's always an exception. So I want to show you a couple of weedy things that you will see even in a bad year. This is a weedy mustard. There are some mustards that are quite weedy and that you're going to see around town. You'll see them in front of the post office or growing through the cracks in the sidewalk or any disturbed lot that is in kind of bad shape. So you're pretty much guaranteed to see this. And this is Cimbrium ereo or London rocket. This one is not a native. And the other ones that we saw, the Physaria and the Draba, those were native plants. But this is the first non-native that we've seen in this presentation, although you'll see it a lot. And here's a close-up. of what the fruits look like. So you can see that the fruits are very different than that bladderpod that we looked at, but these are fruits. Those aren't leaves. You could mistake them for leaves, but then you have to look a little bit more carefully at the plant and see that the leaves are farther down on the plant. You can't see them in this photo. This just really shows you the close-up of the Brassicaceae fruits standing erect at the top of the stem. Here's another weedy mustard that you'll probably see in Silver City. Its common name is flicksweed, Descarania sophia. It flowers in March. You can see the fruits there again, standing up at the top of the stem. Another non-native. Here's another non-native to look at. This one, however, is a tree. And so I want to show you a couple of trees and shrubs because we're not, when we're looking at spring flowers, it isn't just herbaceous flowers. There's trees and shrubs, and they're going to be here even in a really dry year. So this is Ulmus pumila, or the Siberian elm, which you're probably all familiar with. It grows all throughout the area. And sometimes the streets are absolutely covered with its seeds. They're all, lined up in the gutters of the street. And the Siberian elms it flowers and fruits before the leaves come out. So the leaves can look, or the fruits can be very distinctive and easy to see. This is what the leaf looks like when it first comes out, when it's in good shape, before insects have started eating it. You can see that it has a lot of teeth along the edge, which is called a margin. A lot of teeth along the edge of the margin of the leaf. And you can also see that at the base of the leaf, which is where it's attached to the stem or the petiole, that it's asymmetrical. One side of the leaf is a little bit bigger than the other. That's a characteristic of this plant. And here's what the fruits look like. I'm sure that if you live in Silver City, you're intimately familiar with these things, which are all over the streets in the spring. They're called samaras, and they're really thin and papery. Here's another tree. This one is a native, Prunus serotina, or southwestern chokecherry. This is in the Rosaceae, or the rose family. And Prunus is a really great genus. It's very important and well loved because it has plums and apricots and cherries and peaches and almonds. Prunus is a really great genus. And they're beautiful flowers, you can see. And there's a close-up of them. And although they're quite beautiful, they actually don't smell particularly great. So that's another thing to just be aware of, is that, smelling things is encouraged. Here's another plant in the rose family, or Rosaceae. And this one is Apache plume, Phyllogia paradoxa. This is a shrub, not a tree like the chokecherry is. But again, you can see here the 5 petals and many, many stamens. These are characteristics of the rose family. And for me, this Phyllogia paradoxa, Apache plume, it holds a special place in my heart, because when I moved here in the mid-'80s, this is the first shrub that I learned. I didn't know anything about plants, but it's all over the place. It's very conspicuous. It flowers in the spring, and you can easily see it along the roadsides in flower, very beautiful. And just to show you how little I knew about plants, I couldn't understand why this plant had 2 different types of flowers on it, why it had this white rose-like flower and then these pink fuzzy things. And it wasn't until much later I realized those pink fuzzy things aren't flowers, those are fruits. So just a little encouragement to not feel dumb about plants. New Mexico has either the 4th or 5th highest plant diversity in the country. So we have a lot of plants. And I just want to encourage people to be fine with not knowing everything, because there's a lot to know. Here's another tree that grows flowers in the spring. These are the flowers of Quercus grisea the gray oak. This one is a native, and it's in the Fagaceae or oak or beech family. I wanted to show you the flowers because they come out in the spring, and my house is surrounded by oak trees, emery oaks and gray oaks, the most common ones right around Silver City. And I see birds when these are in flower that I don't see at any other time of year. And so I love it when the oaks are in flower. The flowers are not considered conspicuous or showy or beautiful by most people, but they definitely flower. And once you have an eye, once you have a search image for what oak looks like in flower, I think that the whole tree has a very fuzzy and soft appearance when it's in flower. And also when the leaves emerge in the spring, they are very soft. You probably know that later in the year, the oak leaves are very hard and leathery and tough, but when they first come out, they're very soft. And the whole tree, the gray oak, the emery oak, can have a very soft appearance. So even so soft looking that you can see it when you're driving, 65 miles an hour down the highway, you can see, oh, the oaks are flowering right now. So just try and get that in your mind, what an oak in flower looks like. I want to show you now our last plant of the presentation. This is the one I referenced in the title. This is Larea tridentata, or creosote bush. And I think probably most of you know what creosote bush looks like. It grows at slightly lower elevations than Silver City. Like if you drive from Silver City to Deming, it's all over, on the way down there on Highway 180. And if you've ever had the good fortune, and I hope you have, of coming across creosote bush after a rain, it is the most beautiful smell imaginable. And here is a close-up of the flowers and the fruits, those fuzzy little white fruits. It's a cool plant. It smells really good. I want to give a shout out to a couple of really great photographers and botanists who are on this call. I happen to see both of you on it, so thank you very much for letting me steal your photos, Russ Kleinman and Elroy Limmer. I also want to tell people, in case you don't know about it, about the great website that Russ Kleinman put together called gilaflora.com. And so almost all of my photos were taken from there. I think I have a few Elroy photos thrown in here too. And Elroy's a great photographer of plants and animals. And if you go to gilaflora.com, you can see these plants that I have shown you on the presentation tonight. And you can see when they were in flower, when Russ saw them, and where he saw them. So that's very helpful to know. I mean, I've tried to tell you, oh, this flowers in March or April or May, but you can get some very specific ideas of when and where to see these things by going to gilaflora.com. So thank you for that service, Russ. And I just want to thank everybody for joining us here tonight. And I think that right now, I'm going to turn it back over to Don, who I think is going to moderate any questions that you might have. And I just want to encourage everyone to get out and botanize this spring, even if it probably won't be a great year for spring wildflowers, but you're always going to see something when you're out there. There's always going to be some plant to look at, even if it isn't in flower. So, and it's always just great to get out there. So I hope you all do that, and don't let me discourage you by saying you might not see some of these. So, okay. Do you want to take it away, Don?
I will. Thank you, Donna, so much. That was wonderful. You said you timed yourself today and you went for 15 minutes, but it's 7:40. We knew, Wendy and I know that with your knowledge and background, it was fantastic. Thank you. I just want to do a few little catch-ups here on the chat box, but those of you that have questions right now, please put them into the chat box right now. And then as I go through, we'll ask your questions. We won't open it up to the whole audience because we've got 55, we had at the most 56 screens, but a lot of folks like Wendy and I are sitting here. There are two of us, I would say that we have over 70 people here tonight, maybe more. So that is fantastic. So please, in the chat box, write your questions and we'll get to those. I love this idea about how to pronounce scientific names. We always say Latin, but a lot of them have Greek roots as well. And anyway, so let's see here. Russ Kleinman says the correct way to pronounce it is the way your professor did, and I like that. But Nava comes on, I think it's my favorite. My rule is to say with enough authority that it makes the other person think they've been saying it wrong the whole time. So yeah,
Perfect.
just say it like you know what the heck you're talking about. I like that a lot. So it looks like arugula called rocket in England. Susan says that it's in the Brassicaceae, the cabbage family. So let's see here.
I'm not sure what that question is referring to. Does that mean what did I say? London rocket, Sucimbrium aerial? Is that what the question is? Oh, no,
That was what
arugula is in the
prompted-
cabbage family. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you called it London rocket, and then someone from England here, Jeff and Anna, know the common name. See, there's a problem. Rocket. It's rocket in England. But see, that's why we use these scientific names, because there's only one scientific name for arugula. And there's only one scientific name for a human. And there's only one, et cetera, et cetera. So
yeah. That's why I try to encourage people to use scientific names, even if they're a little intimidated about pronouncing them, because common names are so meaningless. There are several common names that are for one plant. One plant can have several common names, and one common name can describe several different species. So, I mean, you basically can call a plant anything you want for a common name. I mean, I remember taking a botany class once where I was taking it with a friend who made up a name for a plant and got half credit. He called something Piccadilly plumweed for a joke because he didn't know what it was, and got half credit because common names they're a dime a dozen.
So I thank you. I have Carlos says, can I make a brief announcement? Yes, a brief announcement. Go for it.
It doesn't have to do with this talk. That was excellent. I am sorry, but it's something I don't think has been advertised a lot. There's going to be an agave festival in Tucson on April 21st for a week. And it's going to have from mezcal tastings, agave IDs, blah, blah, blah. There's going to be an agave roast and so on. It's organized by Gary Navhan. And there's even going to be a concert by Lila Downs with Mexican songs on agave. So that's all. That's the brief announcement. Sorry, I didn't want to take Donna's thunder, but I wanted to just advertise that this is happening. If anybody's interested, I have the schedule, and so I can send it to everybody. I can send it to Donna. He can send it to everybody.
Thank you very much, Carlos. You rang a lot
Gary
of
Paul
bells.
Nabhan is a super interesting guy. If you've read any of his books or haven't even, he's very interesting.
Oh, he's very funky.
Yes, and this whole idea of agave, the Gila Native Plant Society, hopefully is going to be working with the Bat Conservation International and planting agaves. And that's a long story, and I won't go on, but to go and see Lila Downs would be a fantastic thing. We lived in Minnesota for many years, and she has a Minnesota connection, Minnesota and Oaxaca. And so that would be excellent. And so, Carlos, you get that information to us, and we will.
I can send you also the advert for the plenary talk is by two evolutionaries. Stemless is going to talk about the evolution of agaves, which is a very cool thing. You probably will need mezcal for that one because they're molecular biologists. But
we will get it out to the group.
I
So
will
I
send
want to
that.
call, right now on Betty Spence. Betty, are you with us?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, tell us a little bit, because I know we go out and we see plants, we see flowers, and you know, you never know exactly where you're going to see them and when you're going to see them. But tell us about our Gila Native Plant Society Facebook page briefly. And then what can people do when they see some of these plants starting to bloom so that they can tell us what they saw and then where they saw it so we can get it out to the folks?
Yeah, on Facebook, we have a Facebook page. You just search Gila Native Plant Society and you'll find it. And in 2020, which was a year in which there was a lot of rain in November and December, in March and April, the wildflowers in our lower elevations were incredible. And we tried to put on our Facebook page where to go to see some of them. And they may be scarcer this year, but if people get out and they see, you know, a spread of bladderpod, or they see a whole, you know, lovely bunch of dahlias or lupins, or we'd like to know so that we could share it with other people. And if you like, you could email me at betty.spence7@gmail.com, or you could email gilanative@gmail.com, which is our Gila Native Plant Society web email. Or you could put a message on the Facebook page, on our Facebook page, and then we'll try it, hopefully with a photo and directions, and we'll try to share it. In 2020, Spring Canyon, which is part of Rockhound State Park, was amazing. The City of Rocks is usually pretty good. Route 70 is fine. There's even out 70, there's a ranch you can go into with the BLM's Round Mountain Rockhound area, which was full of wildflowers. Those are some of the places where you might see the first ones. And then as the season goes on, they'll be in higher and higher elevations. So please check out our Facebook page at Gila Native Plant Society and share with us, and we'll try to share with others.
Excellent. Thank you, Betty. We'll get that up on our website and then try to alert our members to these places that are sort of hot spots. And
Those are all really good suggestions, Betty. I mean, I've seen some really great spring wildflowers in all of those places that you just mentioned. And it just occurred to me that on Highway 90, driving down to Lordsburg, I mean, you can see once you drop down kind of out of the mountains and you're in the low area heading to Lordsburg, you can really see a lot of flowers by the side of the road. Rumex is one of them. Dock, like curly dock. Rumex comes up so early. I should have put it in my slide presentation, but I just now thought of it. So yeah, that's one you'll see really early. And it's
you know,
conspicuous.
And the Rumex, the dock, is a plant that folks for, you know, thousands of years have used as a dye stuff. And it's a very nice kind of a yellowish brown, as I remember, and in some of the Navajo weavings, you know, earlier Navajo weavings before the synthetic dyes. But so yeah, so there's just so much interest and so much fascination for me in wild plants for so many different reasons, because they're beautiful and they're unusual and they can live in no soil, you know, with no rain, total sun, and they can be used as dye stuffs. You can eat them. I mean, so it's a wonderful thing. So Donna, I want to ask you about these plant families, and I was really happy that you really talked about the plant families. So, you know, we're not all professional botanists. I'm not a professional botanist, but once you start to notice these similarities and these characteristics of certain families, it at least can get you to a you know, a group of plants that you can identify. Do you have anything more to say about that?
Yeah, plant families, it's, as I said earlier, you know, we have more than 4,000 species of plants in New Mexico. So you really, in order to narrow it down, it really helps to know some family characteristics. And I swear I do not get I don't get, oh my gosh, I cannot think of the word I'm looking for. I don't get paid to promote a book, but I just do want to see that Flowering Plants in New Mexico has in the front of it, it has some characteristics of the different plant families, and it's very helpful to know that stuff. Like here, I just happen to open to this page, which has the lily ACE in it, so that's the lily family, and it'll tell you stuff like stamen 6, pistil 3 parted, stuff like that. And it has pictures too. You don't have to know all the terminology because commission, that's the word I was looking for. I don't get a commission for plugging this book, but it's a great book to take with you because it has so many plants in it, illustrations. And knowing the plant families is extremely helpful. And I would recommend starting with a couple of the easy ones, like the Lamiaceae or mint family. They smell like mint. You know, use your senses. If it smells like a mint, it's probably in the mint family. If it looks like a rose, it's probably in the rose family. If it has pea flowers, it's in the Fabaceae family. So those are things that you can pretty quickly pick up. You don't have to be an expert. I'm not a professional botanist. I don't have a degree in botany. And like I said in the presentation, do not start with the Asteraceae family unless you are a masochist, because you know you'll get discouraged. So start with some of the easy small families, like you know the mustard family. It's not small, but it's pretty easy to learn. The mustard family, the mint family, even evening primrose because they're conspicuous. Oh gosh, I'm trying to think of some other plant families that are pretty straightforward, pretty easy ones to start with.
How about the Cactaceae?
Cactaceae?
The Cactaceae.
Well, you could recognize that it's a cactus, right? But
Yeah.
I think once you get beyond that, I personally have a little bit of a hard time with some of the cactuses. So, I mean, you know, you'll know what family you're looking at, certainly, because that's an easy family. But then once you get inside of it, it becomes a little more complicated. Yeah, so I think learning plant families is extremely helpful, and going on field trips with the Native Plant Society, people are friendly in the Native Plant Society, and you have a whole range of people, from people who have PhDs in botany down to people who say, "What a pretty pink flower." So there's always somebody who's on your same knowledge level, and nobody's going to look down their nose at you. So
Right.
I hope people are encouraged to go.
And I'm thinking about exactly the same thing. When I learned to play tennis, I learned with people that knew how to play tennis better than I did. And when I learn my native plants, I go with people that know more about native plants than I do, and I can always learn. So we have this great diversity of folks in the Native Plant Society. And one of the things, and Donna, you have actually participated in this, when we get a big group, I like to break it down and say, okay, all of those of you that don't know, an alligator juniper from Fairgrass, come with me, and we have a great time. And you did that for us. And so we're amenable, we're, I don't know, Eddie, you're having trouble with words, and so am I, but we have something for everyone. And so we really, really would love to have all of you and families, mom, dad, kids, just please come out. And so here's a question or a comment from Russ. So Russ, you're talking about something that's already in bloom in Silver City. Why don't you go ahead and unmute and tell us a little bit about it?
Well, you got to go out and see this. Carphochete bigelovii likes rocky hillsides, so you can find that right behind Western New Mexico University right now. If you go to the top of the hill that all the students walk over to get to class, you can find it in the Burro Mountains. I haven't seen it yet on Highway 15 north among the Rocky Crags. There's still too much snow and too cold up there. But if you're down in the somewhat lower elevations among the rocky crags, place you wouldn't expect necessarily to see something going on right now on the top of it. It likes being on the top of places. So if you're looking, and I would look at the top of Bullard Peak or something like that, you're going to find this blooming up there. Actually, it usually starts the end of January and goes through about the 1st of April. It's in the Asteraceae. Those of you, it is a tough family. And it's not characteristic in a certain sense because the individual, that what makes the daisy family is a whole bunch of flowers all in one cup. Like think sunflower here. This one is a little bit odd, Carphochete, because the individual florets are so big they look like individual flowers themselves.
Thanks, Russ. That was great. And it really is, you just have to get out and start, putting your head down. I mean, birders are looking up and looking around, and that's cool because I'm a birder too. But, you get out there and start looking. And I'm noticing that our honeysuckle vine has, about, I don't know, maybe 1/4 inch leaves already coming out. And we have the Anemopsis californica, which is
Yerba Mansa?
Yerba Mansa, thank you. Sometimes, you just forget those common names. Yerba Mansa is starting to come up and it's, I don't know, 1/2 inch or so. And it's, anyway, so get out there and look. So we're closing in. If I don't see any additional questions. Donna, we made it to 8 o'clock. And it was an absolutely fantastic presentation. And all of you can do your little wavy hand Zoom thing and thank Donna. We have some programs that I showed you earlier on. Ron Perry coming up and Dara Seville coming up and Russ Kleinman coming up. We're all crossing our fingers and hoping it really, really, really is true that the pandemic is in its last death throes and we can get back together and greet and meet each other. So, but when we schedule these programs, we're still in a state of, I don't know what the pandemic is going to be like. So we scheduled some Zoom programs. So I'm thinking, it's very possible that Russ's program in May on the Penstemons will be live. The other ones are folks that are out of town, which Zoom is wonderful because we can get people from out of town. To present. So anyway, so stay tuned. But thank you, Donna. It was a fantastic presentation, and we will not hold it against you that we did not get all of the rain. But who knows? There may be miraculous poppies in the Floridas this year. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, Donna.
Thank you. Good night.
Yeah.
Good night. Thank you.